Okay, so we have had a look at an answer which only scores the band 1, band 2 for question 4. So we're going to look at one which managed to get band 3, so the higher band. Of course, band 4 is the highest band, so this is by no means a perfect answer, but it's pretty good. So from the first one, we noted the problems that the student made really was that the textual referencing was limited, that they did not consider the effect of the language features and word choices on the reader, and that even though they did engage with the question, so they made a statement, yes, I agree, and they said, yes, in some ways I agree, they were a bit haphazard about it, and they didn't really clearly understand the text itself, which led them going on off a bit in a tangent. And yeah, so there was a lot that student could have worked on, really. So we're going to have a look at this student here. So from the start, we have got clear statements of response with relevant textual reference. So the relevant textual reference is in yellow there, and the clear statements of response. So they've started off by saying, I agree with this to a large extent. So it's always good. When you're answering a question like this, come out and say, I agree with this, or I agree with this to a large extent, or I broadly agree with this. They're unlikely to give you a statement that is blatantly untrue. So look for reasons why the statement is right, to start with. So I infer that Hale is feeling on edge and uneasy in Brighton. This is due to the fact that he seems to want to get out of every place in it as quickly as possible. He seems to move on as soon as he's able to. So they've made a point there, and they've backed it up with evidence. He drank his gin and tonic hastily as the clock struck 11 and moved on to Castle Square. So what the student is doing is they've got a clear response there. So they've said, okay, so I think he is very on edge and easy in Brighton, and he seems to want to move on to as quickly as possible, and that student has backed it up instantly with a well-chosen example. He drank his gin and tonic hastily. It also shows how anxious and paranoid he could potentially be. This bit here, this last bit, I can see where the student's coming from, but I think that the student's gone out on a bit of a limb. See what you think when you're reading the source, but I don't think that he is drinking this because as quickly as possible because he thinks it may be poisoned. Quite apart from everything else, if you think about this, it doesn't make logical sense. It doesn't matter how quickly you drink a drink, if it's poisoned or not. If your drink's poisoned, if you drink it quickly, you're still going to die. So I think that's where the student's trying to go on a bit of a limb here, but it hasn't worked. Fortunately, it hasn't cost them any marks, though. So, Hal also comes across as feeling nervous and unsafe, as he says there were reasons why he didn't feel too safe in Brighton, even in a Whitsun crowd. This is showing that Hal cannot feel at ease even after a Christian festival environment. He believes that people who wish to murder him could still harm him here. So you've got a really relevant textual reference there, and it's been used to support a clear point that even in the crowded area he is still worried about his life. So they're looking at the writer's method here, and this is really good. Writer creates a sense of an unsafe atmosphere by cutting a sentence off in the middle. Now, we've looked at short sentences as language features and structural features before in previous sessions. Do not ignore structural features. This creates a sense of mystery and danger. Yesterday Southend, today Brighton, tomorrow. And this is the clear effect. This is where they're talking about the clear effect of that. This makes it look as though there may not be a tomorrow for Hal, as he would be dead. So straight away they've identified the effect this is supposed to have on the reader. It would have been better if they had said this makes the reader feel there may not be a tomorrow for Hal, as he would be dead. So look at your structural features as well as your language features here. As well as this, the sentence is in its own paragraph. This makes it seem alone and isolated, much like Hal at the moment. So again, they're isolating that clear effect. The writer has used that they've used the standalone paragraph, the standalone sentence, isolated, and it sort of reflects the isolation that Hal feels. I don't personally completely agree with that interpretation. I think that the author probably had it as a standalone paragraph merely for dramatic effect, so that the reader themselves are going to have to take time for the effect to sink in. However, because they have backed it up so well, they've made a suggestion, they've made an inference As long as you can back up those suggestions and those inferences with evidence, you're good. It doesn't matter if the examiner particularly agrees with your interpretation, as long as you've backed up your interpretation. That's what matters. And as long as your interpretation is valid. There's more than one answer to these. The paragraph that begins after this is a completely different subject. So again, they're talking about structure, as if Hal's death would mean very little, as if it is little importance to people, as Hal cannot bear to think about what tomorrow could or couldn't begin. So a rattle of miniature cars, the ghost train driving between grinning skeletons under the aquarium promenade. So they've drawn out some word choices here. They've explained what they mean. So it supports the focus of the statement, creates a sense of uneasiness. The way that the writer has described these ordinary things, he has made them seem creepier, like objects in the dark, and our mind plays tricks on us. So, this student got a level 3 plus perceptive comment from level 4, 16 marks. So, detailed and developed, that's what they're looking for here. Perceptive comment on effect. Okay, so that is where the writer is saying, you know, about the paragraph standing alone and isolated, much like his at the moment, and this makes it look like there may or may not be a tomorrow for Hal. The candidate has a number of ideas, so again, you've got more than one idea here that show their agreement of the statement. They are presented clearly with relevant support from the text in all cases. So they haven't just picked out one language feature, they've picked out several language and structural features and mapped them up. Structural features and interesting. Okay. So they've deemed the idea about the topic change, suggesting Hal's death would be of little importance, and reference to tomorrow was deemed to be perceptive. So they've said that's the band 4 thing there. Okay, so that's where the student has gone out above and beyond what is required and done a band 4 answer. So that is a good, solid reply there that we've analysed in some depth. So now hopefully you'll be more ready to create your own answer.